A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Today's case will likely leave you feeling outraged and crying. How is it possible that a man convicted of killing an 8-year-old girl was sentenced to a mere 30 years and then gets released after serving just 11 years? The authorities said he wasn't a threat to society. Oh, but he was. He's now been charged with 2 more murders, which frankly would not have happened if they had kept this killer locked up. But police didn't arrest him for these 2 latest murders because of amazing investigative work. The killer called police himself, identified himself, and confessed. Listen for yourself.
I ended up murdering a lady soon afterwards, 2016, 2017. I don't remember, but it was on Sarah Drive.
Now let's drop a pin right here so as to highlight this next revelation. The killer told police on the phone that he had killed a woman, even provided the street address. But police didn't even notice that it was a murder when they first responded to the woman's house and didn't even classify it as such. But it gets worse. Police submitted a DNA sample from her rape kit, and in 2020, the following year, it came back as a match to the killer of that 8-year-old girl. And because of admitted police incompetence, they never looked for him. If they had, they could have avoided yet another murder. And now the woman's children say that they've been told by the prosecutor that this incompetent police work is just too embarrassing to bring up at trial, even though the man has confessed. So the DA is looking to maybe make a deal with the killer, and the families are not having it. The daughter of the murdered woman will be joining us, plus the sister of the 8-year-old girl who was murdered. 2 families who have suffered terribly and continue to suffer to this day. They deserve justice. We are recording this on Wednesday, July 10th of 2024. Our guest today is Luis Bolaños, a former homicide detective with more than 30 years of law enforcement experience. He now runs his own firm called Get Bit Investigations. As many of you know, Luis volunteers so much of his time as an advocate for survivors through the PAVE organization, which stands for Promoting Awareness and Victim Empowerment. Luis is working with the family of Gloria Lofton, the mother who was murdered, and that is the case which police botched. Luis, welcome. This is an extraordinary case that you have brought to us.
Yes, it truly is, Anna. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this with you and for sharing it with your True Crime News audience. I really appreciate it. I know the families of all victims do. It's interesting because in your intro there, which really laid it out very well, very clear. So we have a great base here to start from because there's so much to the story. Interestingly enough, we label it as incompetent police work. Austin Police Department, they don't label it that way. They label it as a misstep.
An oversight, they said. An oversight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
no. This is not an oversight.
No, not even close. And that's embarrassing. And they should be truly embarrassed by giving it this label. And I think you'll hear from the daughters of Gloria Lofton themselves what that word oversight, misstep means to them. How
disrespectful. It is disrespectful.
Absolutely.
They had a DNA match to a convicted killer who ends up then confessing to the murder of Gloria Lofton. This case, this angers me for so many reasons. We always ask the question on this program, what would justice look like? And we believe that those who have suffered, whether it's the victim or the survivors, have a say in what justice means. But in the case surrounding this man that we're going to talk about, all it seems that anyone ever cared about were his rights.
Correct.
Nobody else's. No consequences really for his actions.
Yeah.
I'm just sickened by it, but we have the family waiting to come on to discuss these cases with us. So, Louis, you and I are going to get everyone up to speed so everyone can understand why everything is connected, not just by the man who police say committed the crimes. It's beyond that, how they're all connected, because one oversight, as the police call it, in one case makes it possible for another person to be murdered. That is not an oversight. So let's get to it because they're waiting. So we're talking about Austin, Texas here, and all these murders are linked to one convicted killer, say police. Let's start with the accused here. 63-year-old Raul Meza Jr. This is truly a horrible human being. He may sound nice on that audio that you heard at the top and you're going to hear more of. But no, this man is a violent human being. No question about it. He was released from prison in 1993 for a heinous crime against a child. Who could do anything against a child? He was convicted in 1982 of sexually assaulting and killing 8-year-old Kendra Page. So he gets sentenced, Louis, to 30 years. A deal is cut. The detectives on the case don't even know that this deal is getting cut. And then what happens after the 30 years, Louis?
Somehow, unbelievably, he gets let out after only serving 11 years, which is unbelievable by itself. But the reason he got let out is because of good behavior in prison. That's all it took. That's it. And I don't even know how that's even possible. I really would like to know where the people that made that decision are working now, if they still are employed, how they feel about this. Because he absolutely went on to kill again and again.
By his own words. By his own words. And as you know, on this podcast, we are, innocent until proven guilty. He has been charged with these 2 murders. He has confessed in his own words to these murders. And we want to make sure that nothing goes wrong with the prosecution of these 2 murders, because no one wants to be standing in this position again when someone else gets killed. So, but again, by his own words, he has admitted to it. It is just shocking because now police are saying he may have killed as many as 10 people. It's almost as if they just woke up and realized that there was a serial killer among them, but they hadn't connected the dots.
Yeah, absolutely. The DNA, let's chat about that a little bit on this misstep, this oops, I don't know what else, they're trying to soften it up so much. But what actually happened here is that on scene, and we'll get to this in a bit, but the misstep that they're talking about is DNA that was collected during a rape kit, put on a shelf, eventually submitted to CODIS, the lab, and they claimed, law enforcement agency claims that based on their internal affairs investigation, that the investigator that was charged with checking, following that up, was assigned to another case, a big case that was going on in the city of Austin. And because of that, he was busy and somehow that was swept under the rug, forgot to follow it up. Now,
he missed the email.
He missed the email.
The email that is telling you that your open cold case on the murder of a mother has found DNA that belongs to a convicted killer who is currently on the streets. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Okay, let's get back to this so we can bring the family members on here, Louis, because there's just so much, and I don't want anyone to miss anything, because every single piece that we're going to discuss absolutely is like vital to all of these investigations and ties everything together. So here's the thing. We wouldn't even be having this discussion right now because we wouldn't even know about the DNA, right? Because no one knew about the match. The only time this was all figured out is when this man, Raul Meza, gets on the phone. He calls 311, the information line for Austin. And the operator's like, well, hold on, let me get you to the police, right? Because here you are trying to confess to 2 murders And I think maybe you should be talking to the detectives. Okay, this is an unbelievable confession call, and it's just shocking. He gives his name. He confesses to the two murders, the murder of a woman in 2019 named Gloria Lofton, who was 65, and then the murder of a man in 2023 named Jesse Fraga, who was 80. We're going to play you some of this 14-minute call, which Lewis has obtained. Everything that you're going to hear on this call is supported and matches what is written in the affidavit about the charges for these two murders that we're going to discuss. Now, it's a 14-minute call. It was made on May 24th of 2023. This was a few days after the murder of Jesse Fraga, the 80-year-old man, okay? Now, one note here before you hear this. He, the caller, doesn't use Gloria Lofton's name in the confession, but what he does do is he provides her address on Sarah Drive. And remember, as far as cops know, they never even classified Gloria's death as a murder.
Right.
Never classified as a murder.
Yeah.
I just can't. All right. So listen to his story here. And he goes on and on about how he's been on the streets since 2016, and he claims that he's so unskilled because he's always been locked up that he couldn't manage on the outside. Boo-hoo. Listen to the details here of the call.
I ended up murdering a lady soon afterwards, 2016, 2017. I don't remember, but it was on Sarah Drive. Anyhow, just recently with Jesse Fraga, we have been having a sexual relationship almost a week before his son passed away with COVID and his wife. It messed me up in the sense that I've been knowing this family, beautiful family, for many years before, and he just started demanding sex. Started demanding it, and I saw no way out. Other than I had nowhere to go. She was right there on Sarah Drive. And I think the death went misidentified as far as the cause.
Lewis, one of the things that struck me about this, and there's a lot, how did he know that police had misclassified Gloria Lofton's death? How did he know that?
Excellent point, Anna. Right. How did he know? Right? How did he get that information? That's a crucial nugget. But when he found out, I think it upset him. He was upset that this was not being recognized as a homicide, because why else would he call in? Was he feeling bad? I think that was a catalyst that they mislabeled it that made him call in. I don't think that was a tactic that police were intentionally trying to use, but that was the end result. So yeah, how did he know? And that should be part of the investigation here. It should have been part of the internal affairs investigation. How did he know that? That never went public. Right? Yeah,
there was a lot that never went public that he clearly knew. We don't really know why he called in. It's not really clear. Jesse had just been murdered. He had been living at Jesse's house. Everyone knew that. And I think he probably knew it was just a matter of time that they were going to catch him because he lived there. There was going to be plenty of DNA, as we'll get into it. And so he just knew it was up. So why he called and had to confess, I don't know. But you know what? I am so glad that he did, or we would never know what we now about the Gloria Lofton murder case.
Absolutely. That DNA would still be sitting on a shelf in some police locker room to this day. And yes, you also have to think, as you go through this, how many other cases in Austin Police Department are on the shelf.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about Gloria's case, a little bit of detail on that, a little bit about Jesse's case, so you all can understand these two, and then we bring the families on. Okay, so 65-year-old Gloria Lofton was killed in May of 2019. Her body was discovered on May 9th. She was partially clothed, found in the bedroom. She was naked from the waist down. You say, Lewis, according to your investigation, police didn't secure the scene, missed evidence, and the most extraordinary part of all of this, they didn't seem to think that this was a homicide when they walked in the door.
Correct. The family members will tell you that they were left with the impression, because of what they were told by law enforcement, that this was some type of accidental death, possibly alcohol related or undetermined, but no sense that there was an actual crime that occurred there.
But how is that
Anyone,
possible?
anyone who would have walked into that scene would have determined immediately, huge chance this is a crime scene. And bottom line is that's how you're taught in the academy, day one, how to respond and handle a crime, an unattended death. You walk in, and if you don't have a cause, an obvious cause of death at the scene, you treat it as a homicide. And you collect anything and everything that may be relevant. And the family members will tell you what they found when they were allowed back in the house. Embarrassing work.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe this. So her case is determined by the autopsy and then the authorities that it is cause of death undetermined. But how is that possible if there was significant bruising on her head along with a distinct border around her neck? How is that possible? And thank goodness that the coroner, the medical examiner, actually did do a rape kit. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine if they were just like, no, this was how is this an accident? I don't know.
Right,
her shirt was pulled up over her head. That's not an accident.
And she was bottomless. So
Bottomless.
at minimum, it appears like as it may be a sexual assault. How can you not at least put that in the category of which you need to be looking at? Again, intentional or incompetent. I don't know. Both are wrong.
Absolutely wrong. And remember this again when I say always drop a pin in it. The cause of death was not changed to homicide in Gloria's case until after that telephone confession. That is a miscarriage of justice. So, Jesse Fraga, and then we'll get to our families. So in May of 2023, this would have been days before the confession phone call, police get a call to do a welfare check on an 80-year-old man named Jesse Fraga. Police found him naked in a closet near the bedroom. Some things are starting to sound a little familiar here, aren't they? He was wearing women's sandals, had a blue belt wrapped around his left wrist, and then this description in the affidavit was, I was trying to picture this, and he had his left leg bent in such a manner that his left foot was near his head, and there was a brown belt wrapped around his right calf. And then they also found a knife believed to be the murder weapon. When police questioned the family, they said Jesse had a roommate named Raul Meza Jr. Same man who killed little 8-year-old Kendra. Two of the many people representing several families who have suffered and continue to suffer because of everything that has happened here. We have joining us on the left side of your screen, we have Christina Fultz, whose mother, Gloria Lofton, was murdered, and Tracy Goldstein, whose 8-year-old sister, Kendra Page, was killed by this monster. First of all, my deepest condolences to you and your families for everything that you have suffered. I am so sorry you have been put through all of this.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it too.
And the most amazing thing is if in all of this tragedy, the two of you who did not know each other before have been brought together because of this monster and the actions that he has taken against your families. And look at the two of you sitting side by side together. You have formed a relationship out of the darkness of this trauma.
Yeah. And when I first met Tracy, I said, I'm so sorry that we had to meet like this. And it's part of a club that I don't think anybody wants to be a part of. And she was the most welcoming. I'm so sorry back. So it definitely brought us together for sure.
Just amazing.
Yeah, I want to be here to make sure they get the justice that we never got.
You are so kind. You are so kind and generous at a time when, honestly, you don't have to be kind to anyone in this world, but yet you are. Proof again of how wrong the system has been to your loved ones. Tracy, I want to start with you because I believe that what happened to Kendra and how her murderer was treated really was the beginning of the end for so many other people and families.
Yes, it was. It really was. When this was brought to me last year, it brought everything back of what my family had to go through for so many years and stuff. We were treated as the criminal and not the victims for so long. It's just the system is so broke and everything. And my dad and my mom and my older brother tried doing so many things to get laws changed or bring this out to let people know that the system's broke and nothing ever got done. And then I took it on and went to parole hearings and stuff. And that was just a nightmare too. And I feared my life. I feared my children's lives and stuff. And just going back through all the paperwork and everything and knowing what my parents went through when he did get out, it's just, I just can't believe that this is still happening, and there's no telling how many people he's done this to, how many family he's broke since my sister's murder, rape and murder.
Tracy, I don't want to make you relive this, but it did happen so long ago. I do want people to understand, why he should have never gotten that sweet deal, and certainly absolutely never have been released after 11 years. What were the circumstances of your sister's disappearance and murder?
He did a plea deal. He got a plea deal, which my parents didn't want, but it happened anyways. And in the conditions, we were not allowed to go back and sue him or do a case on him about the rape part of him raping her.
Was he not charged with the rape, as you recall?
No, he was not at all. He was only charged for the murder. And that was it. And then,
how did he get your sister? What happened?
She was riding her bike. He lived down the street from us, probably a block and a half down the street from us with his mother. We went to school with his half brothers and sisters. We lived in the neighborhood forever. We knew everybody. My parents knew everybody. We were a close-knit, like neighborhood family. And she was riding her bike that she'd just gotten for Christmas to her friend's house. And he took her. We're not sure if he took her to his house first because they found some stuff that she had on her. Because my mom had just done her hair because we were going to school the next day. So they found some rollers behind the doghouse in his mom's yard. And then the bike was left at the school on a loading dock, and her body was found behind a dumpster with a Christmas tree on top of her.
And Tracy, is it true that you found your sister?
I did not. My best friend to this day knew something was wrong, and she thought it was me. I was at a friend's house. She was riding around at the school and knew something had happened to one of my brothers or sisters, the Page kids, and she rode from the school to my house and was riding back and forth as my dad was working on the vehicle. He was underneath it, and he finally came out from underneath it and asked her what was going on. And she told him that he needed to go to the school, that something had happened. So my older brother and younger brother got on their bikes and rode down there. And they were the ones that identified her. My little brother was I think 6 at the time, and my older brother was 18 or 19 at the time. And um, my younger sister called me and told me that I needed to head up to the school. And when I got on my bike, headed up to the school, when I came around the portable buildings, all I can remember is hearing my mom scream. And that played over and over in my head for so long because she was not allowed to see my sister. They wouldn't let my parents go see her. And she was just, when I got there, I just remember my brother sitting on the tailgate of the station wagon, and everything after that was a blur when my brother told me it was Kendra. And then my best friend's parents brought my sister, because she stayed at the house, brought her up there. And I told her, and then all I can remember is us being in the back of a police car. They drove us to the house, and then we went to the police station, and we stayed many, many hours at the police station. And then it was just a nightmare after that.
I am so sorry. I can't even imagine.
Andrew, it's still tough for me to hear this. I'm sorry. But Tracy, do you remember how much time went by before you found out that your beautiful sister was also sexually assaulted?
We found out, I think it was that day when they took us to the police department. They told my parents that she was sexually assaulted and strangled with a coat hanger, and that they had found a coat hanger, and it was like a sandbox thing. They found the coat hanger there. And then they told my parents that they found some evidence, DNA evidence, on her bike, and which that disappeared somehow later on down the line. And then they did a rape kit on her and everything, according to my parents. I never seen any of the paperwork or affidavit or her autopsy or anything. So, and to this day, I haven't seen any of it because I don't know how to go get it, or if it's still there. And if I can get it or something, I would really like to get it.
I can help you with that. I
was going to say,
yeah,
you've got some soldiers in arms here who will help.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to be clear. Why did they not charge him with sexual assault on a child? Why was he not charged, convicted of that?
He turned himself in to Richard Moya, at the time was a mayor.
He's already had a life of crime. He was involved in some kind of altercation shooting where he left a man paralyzed. And that was when Raul Meza was 15 years old.
Yes. And he had only been out on probation serving. He was supposed to serve, I think, 10 years he got for shooting the store clerk, and he only served 5. He was out a year and 1 day when he killed my sister.
The thing about this plea deal is, how do you have someone who already has a violent criminal background to begin with, has now assaulted and killed an 8-year-old? Who in this whole world thought that 30 years was enough?
Right.
Yeah. Right. He has a lot of higher people on his side. Because clearly, after all this, when he sued the state and the parole board and everything, he got pretty much pampered while he was in Del Valle. He got security. He feared his life.
Oh, poor dear.
He told everybody in court when I sat in there, I had to hear everything he did. The psychiatrist talked on up there about that he did not need to be getting out and everything, that he's a disturbed gentleman. And it was just horrible on the stuff that I had to hear that I should have never had to hear.
Since he got out of prison, and then he was in and out and in and out, but ultimately out in 2016 after, I don't know, all the different violations he had, you've been living knowing that he's in your neighborhood.
Yes. Victim services are supposed to contact me no matter where he goes. If he wants to go get a job, I was told and everything. And then we had to write letters and get people to help us write letters on why we didn't want him out. And to me, I don't think victims should ever have to do that. They should never, somebody that raped and murdered an 8-year-old little girl should never, ever been able to be put up for probation at all or get out. He should have served his 30 years. If he would have served his 30 years, all these other people, Gloria Lofton, would still be here. Jesse Fraga would still be here. And there's no telling how many other people would still be here. And
I can't wrap my head around it, because the two of you sitting there next to each other, Christina, here you are listening to what happened to Tracy's family. And because of the decisions made in that murder case, you have lost your mother.
Domino effect. Should never have happened. It's the sweetheart deals that he had got for Kendra. I heard that they did it all in one day, and no court. They did it all in one day, swept under the rug, and that was it. He got a sweetheart. He got off with that.
I have to ask, because of this settlement agreement that was taken, that was offered and accepted, and he got that sweetheart deal, as you mentioned, he was never, to this day, registered as a sexual offender.
No.
Oh my God.
Never happened.
No.
Sexual assault of an 8-year-old girl never happened, swept under the carpet. And because of that, he is not a registered sexual offender to this day.
Correct. And I fought and fought and fought. I could not get anybody to help me on what I needed to do legal wise and everything. Victim services helped me a little bit, but they could only do so much and give me so much advice and stuff. But every time I would talk to somebody, the DA and everything, and put these conditions on him, I wanted him to wear a monitor, which he did wear for a while, but they got that where he didn't have to wear the monitor when he got out. He didn't have to register as a sex offender. And I told my husband, I said, we need to get security cameras or something. So we got security cameras, and then I got a huge dog. Because a lot of the times my husband worked out of town and it was just me and the girls at home. So, but I thought living out of Travis County was going to save me. And come to find out this past year, he lived 10 minutes away from me.
He totally got away with it. And of course you lived in fear. For God's sakes, look what they did to your sister, what he did to your sister. How could you not live in fear? This man is a monster.
Yes.
He is an evil monster. And the fact that the system cares about his feelings, his safety, his rights,
slap in the face.
It is a slap in the face and a punch in the gut.
Yes.
And we just can't let this happen again.
No.
We need justice. We never, as a Page family, ever got justice. Ever.
Christina, when you heard that audio recording of the 311 call, and how he's describing, like he's just having a cup of coffee and talking to somebody on the phone about killing your mother. How are you even able to process that?
It was really hard to listen to it because he says a lot of things, one just so calmly, and just like you said, it's just another day for him. And the callousness, just the ruthlessness. And it's certain information that he had said definitely resonated with my sister and I. And we had instant reactions, like to things. And, I don't, the man, he has got to go. It's not okay for what he was doing. I'm glad he called in. It's sad that he had to call in and basically serve the case on the silver platter because nobody else wanted to do the job. So a very small part of me was really relieved to hear someone own up to it, but then it started a whole nother floodgate of, okay, so other people are involved. All right. What do we do now? So it's scary. It's scary to think that people can be puppeteers and do it and get away with it.
The thing about that call, and I can't let go of this because it's just so important to your mother's case. Had he not confessed,
you would have never known.
You would have never known. Her case would still be cold and open, not even classified as a homicide. And you would have never known that there was a DNA match found on your mother's body, in your mother's body, that led to the killer of Tracy's sister.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible. It's a terrible connection. And when we found out who he was, looking into his background and everything, the police had told my sister that he was a convicted killer. And they kind of washed it down, and then they left within maybe 10, 15 minutes and then went down to the press release and gave all each other high fives. And what you had saw about the Memorial Day, it was so unempathetic and just everything all over again. But we were still sitting there that entire day saying, oh my God, we didn't know she was raped. We had no idea for 4 years, not one call. So that was really hard to see and to hear.
For those of you, the reference that Christina just made, there was when they announced the arrest of Raul Meza and that he was being charged with the two murders, the murder of your mother and the murder of his friend, Jesse Fraga. Several representatives from all law enforcement there in Austin, Texas, went to the podium to talk. And there was one man who was part of the team that helped to arrest him. Now, mind you, the man called and confessed, okay? And he was the roommate of the last person to be killed, okay? It's not that hard to find this man. But he made a comment that I thought was very inappropriate. He went on and on. Of course, he thanked his team for helping to find and get Raul off the streets. Absolutely, yes. But then to say, and all these people did it over their Memorial Day weekend and they gave up their barbecues. Excuse me, how many people are dead at this moment? And you want us all to feel bad because somebody missed a barbecue? You all missed every barbecue of your lives without your loved ones. That's the barbecue we need to mourn.
Yes.
I'm glad you pointed that out. It's just embarrassing as someone who dedicated the majority of their adult life to law enforcement. I'm embarrassed, and I apologize to both of you and all your family for what you've been going through because of what law enforcement has done, and more importantly, what they have not done.
Yes.
But we're going to try to fix that. We're moving this thing in a positive direction.
So, Christina, I want to talk about your mom's case because there's a lot that was missed here, and it's really important from your perspective what you were told, so we can understand how this is such a colossal failure of the system. So, your mother is found dead in her home. Police tell you what about at that moment what had happened? What did they say happened?
So everything was said to my sister, who obviously called me right ahead and let me know. So she had let me know, I believe it was on a Thursday. She had called me and she was really upset. And she said, hey, Gloria had passed. And of course, I was like, I'm so sorry. You know, what happened? And she said, well, they said it was a natural cause. And the officers had just came by her house physically and said, you know, we found her. We're going to look into it. They gave her a pamphlet, I believe. And that was it. And so for about 5 days, we knew obviously she passed. And so going to the house, they released it. And she didn't want to go to the house because one, you know, like she's really upset. My sister was. And so she asked me to go with her. And so I did. And when we went, we pulled up and there was the medical people, the medical examiner. Mm-hmm. They were still there and they had came out in their little hazmat suits. And instantly I kind of was like, that's weird that they have on, you know, a suit. And I've never dealt with a death at home. So I didn't know what the regulations were. So who am I to know? So my sister and I go up and one of them gives the key to her. And it was literally just a key. Like, here's the key. That was it. There was no, by the way, beware. There was no, you know, there was no obligation of watch out what you're about to walk into. And then we walked into the house and it was a completely different story from what we were told from natural causes to seeing blood on the walls, on the ceiling, on the bed, down the hall. That's not what we were expecting. And of course we were in complete shock. So it was completely different from what they said. You go in hearing one thing and then you see a whole different thing and you don't know what to think. So it was a shock. It literally lives in my day, like my head for the rest of my life. It's horrible. It's terrible.
I'm so sorry that happened, Christina, that no one warned you and said, please brace yourself. And then I'm very sorry for your loss.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. You guys are the say sorry.
No, I know. I do also want to share one thing. So it just compounds, I think, the tragedy and the sadness, and yet the joy and the sadness about Christina. You didn't grow up with your mom, Gloria, right?
Yeah. I was adopted. And then I found her in 2012, and I found my sister. And, you know, it was great. It was wonderful of what I got to meet of her. And we got to get our nails done. She took us to get our nails done and everything. So I got to stay on a couple of times. There was a couple of barbecues we went to. She got to meet one of my children. So it was nice to have that until it was taken away and ripped away. I will never get that back. And as an adopted child, it's kind of affected me now because, you know, for Sonia, it hits on every level I will never understand. But now I'm realizing, you know, I'm never going to have ever that back. And that's not okay. And, you know, it's hard right now as like a 35-year-old to understand that and, you know, talk about it. But yeah, it was taken away from us for what? So
much loss and so much pain. I want to get back to the details of the case, and then we are going to hear from your sister, Sonia, who was kind enough to record a video for us to include so you all can hear her loss and her pain and understand that this is a family that has been torn apart. I want to talk about this travesty of justice in your mother's investigation. So when you're told, all of a sudden, we found your mother's killer, and you're like, you know, your head is spinning. It's like, what? And you didn't even know she had been sexually assaulted. You also found something when you went into that house, that crime scene. You all found some things that you didn't quite know what to do with, which to me is so chilling and is like spot on once again with this man. It's like another version of the DNA hit. You took videos of the home, right? And then there was a notebook, and we will put up this photo for you, and I'm going to have you describe it. You found a notebook in your mother's kitchen, and your mother had written something. And it's what she said and how it was completely unfinished. What did you find?
So 2 things we did find was when we walked into the house, before I had turned the corner and saw the blood, there was a detective glove on when you walked straight into the house, there was a table and it had a lot of her papers and medications and stuff on there. And when we walked in, like, we saw this detective's glove that had a condom wrapper, and a bottle of lube inside the glove, tied up, just sitting on the table. And I took a video of it and a picture because I don't understand what I'm looking at. You know, we heard natural death. What is this condom doing here? It did not hit in my head until going around the corner and seeing the blood and then thinking, oh my God, something isn't right, which is why I made the whole video in the first place. And again, I kept it on Snapchat because it saves, it's like the cloud. I obviously never went back and looked at it. I just honestly forgot about it. But if they saw what we saw, then, you know, they're going to be on that case. You know, they're going to do their due diligence. So, and what do you want to explain? The lead up to that was whenever I went around the corner and I saw the blood in the hallway, and I immediately knew something was wrong. I started going towards the bathroom, and then I realized I turned and there was a room, and that's where I saw the entire crime scene of just blood on the bed, on the ground, the ceiling, the walls. It was every bit of the horror movie, if you can. And I went to step out of the room to warn Sonia. And before I could get out of the room, she was already behind me and she was taking in everything. And we're looking around, and I just remember we didn't even say anything. She was like, I'm going to be sick. And she ran out of the house and she howled the worst scream I have ever heard in my entire life. So when you said about your mom, it's the scream I can't unhear. And she collapsed on the ground. She threw up, and I didn't know what to do other than I'm so sorry. And, you know, let's just get what we need to do and get out. That's when we went back into the house. I made the recording, and then I went around the corner and we were looking more, and we found a spiral open up, face up, with this note that said, you know, I, Gloria Elizabeth Lofton, give Raul, I don't have it in front of me. But
I have it here. I'll read it for you, and then you can take from there. And we have the photo up for you. So this is what she wrote. I, Gloria Elizabeth Lofton, give permission to Raul Meza Jr. to request a certificate of authority on my behalf for the purpose of, and it didn't finish.
Yeah. And in that moment, in the recording that I made, and you can also hear it, the extended recording, I'm like, my sister reads it and she says, who the hell is Raul Meza? It did not click. I didn't know. She didn't know. We don't know. And so I was like, I don't understand what's going on. I was in shock still, and it didn't click until 2023 came around. And that was the worst, horrible thing to come across, was to hear that name in that video and then realize who that was, you know. And and I gave everything over to the authorities, obviously, but the chillingness of just hearing that name come out of my sister's mouth and her being like, who the hell is this person? And then to think about everything going down, you know, was she made to write it? What was this? Like, there's more to the story. And it's horrible as, you know, a child to live always wondering what happened. So, and we're still wondering what happened. So it's an ongoing, it's a lot.
Your mother wrote in her own handwriting the killer's name, left it there for police, and on top of it there was the DNA, and all of this completely missed by police. Completely missed by police.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't have words for this.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I don't have words for this, Lewis.
Yeah, it's unbelievable as you keep digging and pulling the layers back on this. just more actions like this that are just, it's one of the worst investigations I ever heard of in my entire career, Ana, which is one of the things that made us at least reach out to the family and see what we could do. I just, that phone call, that note, the phone call, I have to ask you, Christina, did you have, prior to hearing the 311 call that we played earlier, did you have any suspicions that there might be others involved besides Raul Meza?
Yes. Yes.
Can you share that with us? And was there anything in that call that confirmed your suspicions?
Yeah, absolutely. After the initial day of finding the house and walking the crime scene, we were wondering for about like a good week or so, like what could have happened. Like maybe she fell, and maybe that was what it was, where all the blood was. It just, I didn't understand because they didn't say it was a homicide and everything. Up until, and mind you, we never stopped asking questions and reaching out from 2019 to 2023 to now. And no one would ever give us any answers. They would say it's an open investigation, whatever. So when we ended up getting the death certificate, I kept asking questions like, well, it just doesn't seem right. And that we ended up, the house that my mom was found in and she grew up in and that Sonia grew up in was immediately sold within a couple of months. And my sister was on there, but somebody had to clear it to get her signature, which happened to be our aunt. And long story short, it was the paperwork, the paper trail that we found now is there's a lot of our family signatures written on those, the airship, the everything except for my sister. And the other thing was that the ashes were actually, her body was cremated, and it was it was a choice, I believe, by my aunt. And then she actually ended up having the cremations being mailed to her house, and she has them still to this day.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we have yet to talk to our family since 2019 with all this going on. But in the audio, Raul Meza says that a nephew was involved and he had a hand because they were selling the house and he was going to get this compensation. And then it started making sense. Okay, this is weird. Okay, the house was sold. Where did the money go? I know it didn't go to my sister. So there's a lot of interesting facts that lead to there was other people involved and who found her and the way that it was set up. It just has so many mistakes. And, I believe that there are two people out there that are also the puppeteers that should be caught and found.
So, again, because no one else has been implicated by police here, and we want to be very careful, Raul Meza, and we don't know what he says, what's true, what's not true, made a claim on that 311 call that he was hired or working for someone and that he was going to somehow benefit, it appears, from your mother's passing. But there's no further explanation in that tape. And police have said publicly that they didn't find anything to support that. Now, under different circumstances, you might take police at their word. But when it comes to the investigation of your mother and her death, I think it is reasonable to ask either for another agency or the Attorney General or somebody else to finish off this investigation, because clearly the department charged with this has been unable to fulfill their responsibilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if this killer said that on the 311 call, you're saying there are some irregularities in how the estate was settled.
And the cremation part, that was the other thing I just now realized. He had said that she was cremated twice in that recording. And that was something that nobody knew except for about four of us.
Oh my
It
goodness.
says a lot, unfortunately.
Has anybody in the law enforcement prosecutor side shared with you that they're looking at that angle, that there may be others involved, or they're looking for others, or are they looking for others?
So what we were told behind closed doors was basically that there are other fish to fry. They got their man, and that it is what it is, and that APD doesn't really have time to look for the other possible suspects. And yeah, I think that's absolute trash.
That is bull crap.
And we have given everything as far as the paper trail to the houses, the everything down to when it was sold, the probation area for it, for everything, and they just can't seem to connect anything. I think they should look a little harder.
Another phone call with Raul could straighten this whole thing out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the other thing about Gloria's case that I find another insult here. So because they totally screwed up the rape kit, the DNA match, never followed it, never classified it as a homicide, from what I understand from Lewis's conversations with all of you, explain to me your understanding as to why Raul Meza Jr. is not being charged with sexually assaulting your mother.
That is a very good question. I'm not exactly sure when they found the DNA inside of her, which was let us knowing. And I'm not quite sure why that's not on the table when, there are a lot of evidence that points to it.
Is it because it's just too embarrassing that they would then at trial, Lewis, help me here, that they would then have to explain to a jury how they completely messed this up, and that since 2020, they've had, evidence of who killed her and who sexually assaulted her, but because they dropped the ball, could that impact the possibility, imagine this, of not getting a conviction? Because the jury might say, well, we don't know that the police did the right job here. Is this why everyone's moving towards a plea deal here?
I think so.
Here we go again.
We've been it's just sweeping under the rug. Absolutely. Sorry. It's exactly. They don't want to have the embarrassment. They don't want to take accountability, but this needs to be blown wide open because there was a lot of things missed and a lot of people could have been saved between even just my mother and Mr. Fraga. So absolutely.
I agree with Christina 100% on this. Because the bottom line is it comes down to the dollar and or your political position where you hold in that office or in the city of Austin. It's unacceptable, this type of investigative work without transparency from this point on, because that's never existed. And right now there's a plea deal on the table right now that I'll let Christina tell you how she feels about that righteously. And anybody in the family of Gloria Lofton would absolutely have the same feeling and concerns that this clown, Raul Meza, convicted murderer, has an opportunity to be released again on top of everything else. That window is open, and there's only one way to close that window. What do you think of that, Christina?
I think it's atrocious. It's again a slap in the face and a punch to the gut. That this man has done so much damage consistently over the years. He had a couple of chances to do better. He didn't. That's not my problem. I feel that the life sentence, he actually here in Texas, you can get on parole, I believe at 25. If you do half of your time, he could get out. And there's also other issues with safety that, he could probably say that the compassion, he's older, he's frail. What is he going to do? No.
Don't get us started on compassionate release here for killers. Don't even get us started on this. In California, we seem to think, go.
Yeah.
But really? You killed how many people? That's fine. You don't feel so well? Go home and rest. Save your last few moments. They should be comfortable. Give me a freaking break, people.
Exactly. And what he did to Kendra absolutely was not justice. So the fact that there's 3 actual murders on his own hand, that's you can't have the possibility. That's just absolutely atrocious. I
can't believe this. Yeah, I cannot believe that there's actually a plea deal in the works. And from the, I guess from prosecutors' perspective, they're like, okay, we have the guy. We have the confession. We have the DNA, which I don't even know whether it stands up in court because they botched it so badly. I have no idea. And I guess their feeling is, okay, we have him. We have him in custody. Let's do a deal. He's locked up and we're done here. Is that really justice?
No.
No.
Because like you said, we don't want to come back in a couple of years and have this conversation all over again because look at the patterns. She was only 15, 14 when this happened. And her entire life, I'm not going to do that with mine, having this man freely want to get out, or if he still has, connections that we don't know about that he could possibly get out. He is a danger to the society, period.
I want to play a clip from that news conference because, and this goes back, Tracy, to your sister's murder. So the original detective from your sister's case on this day when they announced that they finally have the guy and he's charged with 2 murders and they're all slapping each other on the back saying, good job, you got a serial killer off the streets. One person stood there and told us something that we all know, but it needed to be said by a member of law enforcement. Yeah. So at this news conference, the now assistant city manager in Austin, he at the time was actually the investigator in your sister's murder. So Bruce Mills was the detective at the time. They never consulted him on that plea deal where this guy got 30 years for killing your sister Kendra. And then he had no idea that they let him out. After 11 years, he was shocked. So now you need to hear from someone in this system who actually does get what a travesty this is. Let's play the clip.
We were shocked, disappointed, with no really explanation as to why this case didn't go to trial. We never really got solid answers on that. I think it was 11 years later, this guy was released, and I was assistant chief at the time, police department. He was released and was going to be at some point back in Travis County. Talked to the media at the time about the travesty of justice even then, when he'd only done 11 years from a 30-year sentence. And then here we are 20 years after that, 30 years after that, 93 to now.
The only person at that entire news conference to publicly state the obvious, this was a colossal travesty of justice. Finally, someone speaking some truth here. Now, for those of you who are watching, not listening, you're probably saying, hey, wait a minute, Tracy and Christine have switched locations and spots. Had a little battery issue, everyone. Everything's good, and they're back. We have a few more things that we want to get to. Christina, your sister Sonia was kind enough to provide a video statement for us to include. She could not join us on this podcast, and these are Sonia's words, unedited.
Hello, my name's Sonia Houston. I'm one of Gloria Lofton's daughters, and I was asked to basically just talk about my mom and what she meant to me, who she was to me. My mom, first and foremost, was a very respectful, very intelligent. She had a lot of different attributes. She was good at a lot of things. She always was one of those folks who believed right was right and wrong was wrong. She taught me a lot of things. And dealing with her murder, her death, and now dealing with what is actually the murder and the lack of, or should I say negligence, that APD has handled her case. Me and my family have kind of been trying to figure out what avenues we could go about or how we could actually bring justice to her, as well as the other victims of Mr. Meza. And honestly, we've been hit with nothing but brick walls, a lot of kickback, the piss poor apologies that we've gotten that no one could actually pick up a phone and treat us as though we were human beings. Or more importantly, that our mom was a human. She had a family who is now without her. My kids aren't going to know their grandma and know the good parts of her. I can talk about how we would play Jeopardy. My kids aren't going to get that with her. My kids aren't going to get to hear her voice. They don't even remember it. But she's more than just this case. She's a person with a family. She has value, and that's something that APD and our judicial system here hasn't really acknowledged. They've kind of swept her under the rug, right along with a lot of other folks. And I am very grateful to the PAVE organization and how they have assisted, or they are facilitating, for the first time in a long time, the proper avenues of what to do, what can be done. And hopefully with their help, we are able to bring justice to Glow. That's been my mantra. That's been my hashtag, justice to Glow, or justice for Glow, should I say. And I just need everyone to know that she's more than just this murder. She's more than just this case. She was a human being with value, who was loved, who is still loved, who is missed. And I truly feel as though the PAVE organization has facilitated the first steps in the right direction for me and my family to actually bring justice for Glow. And I'm very grateful, and I do feel as though this is the first time in a long time that something's actually being done for my mother. And whatever I can do to get the word out, I will do. And hey, like I said, hashtag justice for Glow.
When your sister said that she will never be able to play, Jeopardy with your mom and her children, and that her children will not know their grandmother's voice, and that her mother is not a case or a case number, she's a human being. And that's what's missing here, the humanity.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, we do have a response from the Austin Police Department about that DNA disaster. I'm just going to read it to you in all fairness as to their explanation as to what happened and how they classify it, because this is from the Austin Police Chief. The Austin Police Department is deeply sorry about the oversight related to the DNA lab report in the Paul Meza case. First of all, whose case is it? Gloria, say her name.
Yes.
Then it goes on to say, we realize the impacts this has on the case itself, community, and most importantly, the victims and their families. Since the occurrence, the Austin Police Department has added redundancies into the notification process to ensure this doesn't happen again. Oversight and occurrence. We're talking about a human being and their life. What are they not getting?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Just adding these oversights now, they're just figuring out them. It makes you wonder again, what have they not done correctly in the past? And I just have to throw this in here because it's so important. They're putting this solely on the shoulders of the investigator that missed the email. Oversights are already in place in this police department, right? And there's a chain of supervision there. That investigator has a sergeant. That sergeant has a lieutenant. Lieutenant has a captain. And the captain responds to the chief of police. And the chief of police responds to the city mayor. Everyone there in that chain, the higher you go, are more responsible for following up on a potential DNA hit on a homicide. As an investigator and someone who supervises investigators in homicide units, you get excited when you have a potential DNA hit on a homicide or a sexual assault, because that's about as close as you can come to solving these horrible crimes other than having a video to it. But that's a major go-to. So when you wake up every morning, you should be following up mentally, and what can I do to see the status of that? 1 week away, 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away. The supervision, the upper echelons at Austin PD put it on the blame that they assigned it, the initial investigator in this case, to another assignment, and he was busy doing that. And that may be true. They may be short. I don't get it, but they can't put it on his shoulders. They failed miserably on their oversight within their own department. They are the ones that need oversight, right? Not to label someone else with that.
Awful. And, I was reading in the affidavit, Louis, and I know we're going to be wrapping this up because you all have to go. I was reading in the affidavit that when they looked at Raul Meza, he on one of his driver's licenses, he had Gloria, your mother's address, had a driver's license to your mother's address. So here are the clues to your mother's murder. 1, the letter she handwrote herself with the killer's name on it, right? The DNA, which clearly linked Raul Meza, and then his own driver's license at her address. So why didn't anyone just, even before the DNA came back, say, now, as you and your sister said, who the hell is Raul Meza Jr.?
Right.
Yeah, that was the question that was never asked.
Right.
Yeah.
And Tracy could have told him exactly who he is.
Yes.
Who and what he is.
What gets me is the news media is the one that contacts us. The news media is the one telling the police department, apologizing to all of us through the news media. Not one of us have gotten a phone call from anybody at the police department. Not one person called and apologized to them. They got the apology off the news.
This is vulgar. Obviously we could go on and talk to you and talk about these cases for hours because the level of detail and the evidence which all of you have and the experience and the knowledge, one would hope that someone in some police department is spending more time about looking into this than we are on this podcast, right? Because we could continue to talk for hours on this. I want to personally thank you, Tracy and Christina, for trusting us to tell your story, which is a very painful one of loss. I am sorry that you don't hear that I'm sorry for your loss enough. And you inspire me with your strength and the fact that the two of you have formed a bond out of this great loss and sadness. And that is what I find inspiring, is your human spirit and your determination to get justice for your loved ones.
I appreciate that. And every court, they come, all the pages come, some of the Fragas come. It's a very wonderful, it's very nice to have, because we at least have that support. And that meant everything to us going in the first time, seeing him, and they were there to to watch us cry, to hold us. And it was nice. That's the only good thing about this entire thing, is that we were able to connect with them.
All united by one killer. All right, this story's not done. This case is not done, and we're going to follow it, and let's hope that justice is done in the names of all who have died and their survivors. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Christina. Louis, as always, thank you. I know you are working as a victim's advocate here. You've, as you always do, just offer your services, and everyone appreciates, all this volunteer work that you do to help people.
Thank you, Ana.
All right. This is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. This has been a very special edition. You can find this podcast and all our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our website. Until next week, everyone, this is True Crime News, the podcast, and I'm your host, Ana Garcia.